is nothing better than a good love story, especially during the month of Valentine's Day. But what sort of love story? Some like love at first sight. Others, it may be forbidden love. Others from haters to lovers. But what I want to talk about in this video is a love triangle. For those who don't know, a love triangle is basically when three people are involved in a love triangle. And there could be many variations of this, but sometimes it can get a little bit complicated. In my opinion, there are about 5 examples of a love triangle. 1, where there is a clear bad guy in the group, so it's obvious who you're going to vote for as far as your couple goes. 2, another one where it's easy to side with which couple you want to get together because one of them is dull or boring or just a one note. A lot of rom-coms are guilty of this. 3, there's a couple that are clearly in love with each other, but there is a third wheel who pines after one of them. So a lot of people usually sympathise with the third person who's left out. 4, 2 people love the same person, and that person has to choose between the 2 of them, or maybe not even any of them. And the 5th, I find pretty rare, which is where all 3 are equal. Because in that way, it makes the choice even harder. And a really great example of this is Tim Burton's 2005 stop-motion film, Corpse Bride.
The story of 2 wealthy families arranging a marriage between their children, Victor Van Dort and Victoria Everglot. Luckily, they actually hit it off, but Victor's nerves get the best of him as he cannot recite his wedding vows properly. He wanders into the woods to practice, and at last he manages to recite them perfectly, but places his wedding ring onto a branch in the shape of a hand. To his horror, this hand comes to life, and a corpse bride rises from the ground and brings him to the land of the dead, believing she is now Victor's wife. Victor spends the time trying to run away and get back to Victoria, but over time he comes to see the corpse bride as she really is, as Emily. The story was based on a short story from Jewish folktale where a man accidentally marries a dead woman called the Finger. The story was told to Burton while he was working on Nightmare Before Christmas by Joan Raft. Raft was a story supervisor on Nightmare, but also a storyboard artist for projects such as Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Lion King. He even contributed to the original story of Toy Story, A Bug's Life, and Cars. Raft tragically died in a car crash in 2005 at the age of 45, and Corpse Bride was dedicated to him. He presented the story to Burton as he believed the story seemed to fit perfectly with his style, as the 2 knew each other from Cal Arts. As soon as Burton read it, he knew it would be perfect for stop motion, but one of the hardest jobs was to adapt the story to make the 3 main characters of this love triangle more fleshed out. Some drafts of the script seemed more towards one character's perspective, some made others more sympathetic than others. It was important to get the right balance between Victor, Victoria, and Emily. Even after the final script and the finished movie, it's interesting to see people's opinions on who they root for.
Most of the time, people usually say Victor should have gone with Emily, but some people are completely satisfied that he ended up with Victoria. And some people actually even say that Victor didn't deserve either women. So I thought it might be interesting to actually look at our 3 main characters and work out, did it end right, or should it have ended a little bit differently? Let's start off with Victor, as he is the one who has got to make the choice at the end of the day.
In the very first scene, there's a lot to learn about Victor from just his bedroom. First off is a painting of his childhood self with his beloved dog and drawings of butterflies. This shows his love for his dog, even though he's long gone, drawing in nature giving a sense of a free spirit and a dreamer. In fact, the first thing we see him do is drawing another butterfly and studying its features. However, in the portrait, we can see an expression of being petrified, which clearly shows he's incredibly nervous and insecure. The scene soon reveals that his drawing is from life, as there is the same blue butterfly in a bell jar. He opens the window to set it free. This will play an important part later. We then see the world he is living in, dull, dreary, and drained of colour. There is clearly a strict class system and expectation from the society, and this becomes even more apparent when we meet his parents, wanting to marry him off to a high-class family so they become even more elite despite how rich they already are. Now we see where his insecurities come from, as he never seems good enough for his parents, as they see him as an embarrassment and to keep his personality to himself until after the wedding. Once he is finally alone, he finds a piano in his soon-to-be in-laws' hall and begins to play a soft but beautiful tune, again showing his artistic and gentle side.
Now, even though at this point in the story he meets Victoria, which is his bride-to-be, I think I might fast forward and look at Emily, as a lot of people believe that she really was the right person for him.
And I can see that especially in their similar tastes. The biggest one being that they both play the piano, leading to a scene where they play a duet, and this is even more effective as this is after Victor betrays her by trying to get back to Victoria. This is how these two communicate with each other and end up not only on the same page, but shows the first spark of their chemistry. She even did some kind of research about Victor, as her wedding present to him was his childhood dog Scraps. It's clear she has a similar view on the simplest things. When they both return to the land of the living, she comments on the beauty of the moonlight and dances in its glow. This also gives her signs that she is also a free spirit from her positivity and excitement. But this is clear from her backstory. For those who don't remember, she fell in love with a stranger that she was willing to elope in her mother's wedding dress with some financial stability. Unfortunately, on that night in the woods, as she was waiting for her beloved, she suddenly died with her riches gone. Even worse, it's later found out that her husband-to-be killed her to take the riches she had on her. This, of course, makes Emily more of a tragic figure, but that didn't stop her from giving up on true love, as she made a vow to wait for someone to find her and ask her to marry her.
You have to wonder how long she's been stuck down there, so it's no surprise that she gets very excited when Victor places the ring on her finger. But that hopeless romantic side of her may actually have caused a lot more trouble than she may realise.
Let's get back up to the land of the living and look at Victor's actual bride-to-be, Victoria Everglot. Now, in some ways, I can see why people don't gravitate towards her, mostly because she is incredibly quiet and sheltered compared to Emily's more out-there personality. But considering her upbringings, this is no surprise. Her parents clearly do not like each other, let alone love, and the only reason they arranged this marriage was for their own gain. They had squandered their riches, and the only way to avoid the poorhouse is for their daughter to marry into a rich family. And to top it off, Victoria is forbidden to do certain talents, such as playing the piano. As her mother says, music is improper for a young lady. Too passionate, she says. But the more I thought about the type of home and family she lives with, I think this led the way for Victoria to fall for someone like Victor. When she hears him playing, she realizes this might be a freedom for her, someone who loves art and music and might open up her whole world from such a sheltered life.
A lot of people believe that the way to make a great couple is two people who are very, very similar with each other. And honestly, I don't necessarily agree with that. There certainly has to be a good foundation and a few things you have in common, but sometimes differences can make the relationship more interesting.
You would be able to learn things and be introduced to things you'd never think of, and most importantly, become happier as a conclusion. And I think this would be for Victor and Victoria. After the wedding, they would be able to break apart from their families and finally become themselves with each other, and clearly, from the society of the land of the living, this is something they both need. You can already see the effect it has on Victoria, as when she is confronted by Emily and Victor is dragged back to the land of the dead, she tries to escape from her room and find help. Granted, she sought help from the pastor, who only declares her as insane and sends her straight home. But she fought back against her parents, and it's evident that this is the first time she's rebelled. And when both her and Victor find out that Lord Barkis is to be her new groom, they feel that they have lost their freedom.
And I think that is the word that all three of our main characters need. Freedom.
It's recognisable for Victor and Victoria giving their home and society in the land of the living. For Emily, even though the land of the dead is clearly more positive and colourful, she was stripped away of her chance of true love and almost feels cursed. But as she realises when Victor was willing to kill himself to marry her, that taking away someone else's chance at true love is not the answer. What she really needs is to be at peace. Thankfully, as we find out, that her lover/killer was Lord Barkis, but due to his own incompetence, he met his untimely death, so there is justice for her life taken away. However, by letting Victor and Victoria live their lives as a happy couple, and more importantly free, she can now be free herself. And so at the end of the movie, she transforms into blue butterflies, just like the very one at the beginning of the movie. And remember that Victor let that one free from the bell jar, just as he lets Emily free. And you can even take it a step further, as the bouquet of flowers Emily has throughout the movie is also blue, and she tosses it to Victoria, giving her freedom.
So at the end of the movie, all three in this love triangle helps each other with both their wants and, more importantly, their needs.
This is what makes Corpse Bride a beautiful movie with a love triangle that actually works, and it does it so masterfully that I would argue it is one of the most underrated romantic films. Much like The Corpse Bride herself, it shouldn't be judged just as a dark, weird Halloween film for families, as there is clearly much more that is buried underneath.